What's up, y'all? We are back. Welcome into another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Got a big weekend coming up. Massive game, really pivotal game to kind of dictate which way the season is going to go here. I still think there's plenty of reason for optimism. I still think a lot of the goals that you set out are still on the table, but it's do or die time for the Rams. I've said it a bunch. Felt like the UTSA and Washington State games were some of the biggest swing matchups that you had on the schedule. Really, San Diego State and Fresno State are starting to look similar, but you've got to pull it out at home. 5.5-point favorites. This is a Washington State team that's struggling. This is not the Wazzu of 2022 or 2023 with Cam Ward. I was thinking about that the other day. It's kind of crazy how many top 10 picks the Rams have had to play in the last 5 or so years. First round picks, it's even crazier when you think about, Will Johnson, the corner of Michigan, all the talent they had at Texas, Cam Ward a couple of times, a Heisman winner, and Travis Hunter. I mean, they played some pretty stacked talent over the years, but this is a far different looking Washington State team. That's what we are going to focus on for much of the podcast today. I wanted to just set the scene here by talking briefly about the big announcement that came out yesterday. CSU football, instead of opening the season at Indiana, will be hosting Wyoming. The border war will live on. We knew that they were going to play 28 through 2036. But now with this most recent scheduling change, they will be opening the 2026 campaign against each other. They also added a 2037 matchup in Laramie, a little bit of a scheduling quirk. They'll play back-to-back matchups in Laramie, and I think it's 35 and 36 or something like that. But I love the decision. I know it's a little bit of a bummer to lose another Power 4 matchup. There have been a couple in recent years that were on the books and went away. The trip to Vanderbilt, the Texas Tech stuff. I get that it was exciting when they announced all of these matchups, and there still are some really exciting Power 4 matchups coming up in the next couple of years, couple of which may or may not happen. But I mean, you've got BYU coming to town, the U of A coming to town. If you're CSU, you're going to do everything you can to hold on to those types of games. I do wonder, since they were able to work it out for 26, if they find a way to make it work for 2027 as well and keep the streak going. CSU and Wyoming have played 116 times in total, but they played every year since 1946. Now they're going to keep that going next year. If CSU were to get out of the Wisconsin game and Wyoming were to give up a home game against Central Michigan, they could get a border war in Laramie. You'd even keep the alternating home and home schedule going. It just makes a lot of sense. And assuming logistically that's possible, and that is a big assumption because even a couple months ago, it was not looking very realistic that this game was going to be able to come together for next year. John Weber came on our show in early August and said likely not. So this was a bit of a surprise, but it was very much a pleasant one. There's going to be a lot of juice with that matchup. The beginning of the Pac-12 era, now it's a rivalry game. I love that. We're going to have to get used to playing Wyoming in September, but that's going to become the new norm moving forward. So might as well, get used to that a little bit sooner. I just think it makes so much sense. There's, from a historical perspective, I'm somebody who really romanticizes all of that stuff. And because of that, this is going to be a move I'm in support of. But I think strategically, from a scheduling standpoint, it makes a lot of sense too. I want to be honest and forthright about all of this. Right around 2013, 2014, CSU started to land some of these at the time Power 5 trips. Now it's the Power 4, but they started to schedule these games with more frequency. There had been a stretch in the mid 2000s where admittedly the scheduling got a little bit dull. The Mountain West had a weird stretch where it wasn't phenomenal, especially like when Utah and some of those schools left, and then it recovered well, I think, with some of the additions that they ultimately made from the WAC. But I, like a lot of you, was really excited when they started announcing these games. The trip to Tuscaloosa admittedly was a bucket list experience for me, and it was something that I felt very fortunate to be able to do. CSU played a competitive game against number one. You were able to leave with your head held high. The fans got to experience something unique, and I do think there's value in that. I'm not trying to discount any of that, because I do think it's cool that some of the fans have gotten to go to Austin and see CSU play Texas, or go to the Big House against Michigan, some of these premier destinations in college football. But you also got to remember that the game has changed drastically in the last 10 to 12 years. When you first started announcing these, really, it was through the lens of, we need this payday, so let's get this money. And there's still an element of that that's going to be true, but you're going to get an increased media rights deal with the Pac-12 by how much, still TBD. But you have access to play for a national championship, at least in theory, in a way that you just didn't back then. And because of that, there's a real argument that having multiple Power 4 opponents, especially on a schedule, is not setting yourself up for success. Because if you go 10-2 in the regular season, you win your conference championship out of the Mountain West as is, or, the future Pac-12, you're going to have a really good opportunity to potentially play in the CFP. Now, some of that is based on what happens in the American and, with some of these other schools as well. If one of those teams runs the table, then you might be SOL. But I just think when you look at the schedule and you look at what was originally on the dock here moving forward for some of these seasons, I don't know if it makes a ton of sense to have 2-3 Power 4 games on the schedule at any given time. Now, the years you're playing CU, if you also play like a BYU, it's really exciting that they're coming. I can get behind that. I'm a sucker for regionality and tradition. Again, that's a school you have a lot of history with, so it's exciting to see them coming back. But I do think it's a factor that you should consider. One, you're going to get a 7th home game now, so your chances of winning goes up dramatically just from the key difference of playing at home against a team who's comparable competition compared to going on the road and playing an Indiana team that's on the rise. The history, at least over the last 10 years, says that game probably doesn't go very well for CSU. And honestly, going to Indiana, that's not going to Texas or Michigan or Bama or one of those really premier destinations. I'm sure it's a cool enough environment, and I don't have any beef with Bloomington, I believe it is, or anything like that. But you're 2-17 against Power 4 teams over the last 10 years. That's including Washington. So 2-17 since the beginning of the 2016 season. In those 17 losses, the average margin of defeat has been about 23.5 points. There have been a couple of good ones here and there. You had the thriller against CU and Boulder in 2023. Vanderbilt in 2021 was a good game. The road trip to Iowa was probably really the last time you played competitively on the road in one of these types of games. But the cold hard truth is, while there have been some benefits monetarily from playing these matchups, and there have been some unique experiences for the fans, which I'm not trying to discount, it has not competitively proven to be a winning strategy for CSU. And I do think there's something to be said with a lot of these games being played in September, that you're not putting yourself in position to get the ball rolling, to establish some momentum. I mean, especially when you're losing, 52-0 or something like that. The beat downs you suffered against Texas and Washington State and some of these opponents, I just don't know how much fun that's really been for the fans. I feel like it's taken a lot of the wind out of the sails before we've even really gotten going. And I just think that if you can play 7 home games, you can keep a historic rivalry against Wyoming alive. that's a winning move. And I really want to credit both John Weber, the CSU AD, but also Tom Berman, the Wyoming athletic director, because there was a world where CSU announces they're leaving for the Pac-12, Wyoming gets in their feelings, and despite all of the logic of this being a game that is good for both sides to continue, they could have gotten into their feelings a little bit, taken their ball and gone home and said, screw you guys, you're leaving, we're just not going to play anymore. We've seen that happen. I mean, Oklahoma and Oklahoma State don't play anymore. We've seen so many of these historic rivalries go by the wayside over the years, and they had already done a good job of prioritizing ensuring that it wasn't going to go away in the long run. But now they're going the extra step, and it seems like they're trying to keep this continuous streak alive. This year will be the 80th straight year that they played. That means something to me, and that means something to a lot of older CSU fans. I understand that the Rocky Mountain Showdown, the matchup with CU, has stolen some of the thunder in the 21st century, but the truth is this is going to be a good thing for more CSU fans than not, while a couple of not a couple, but a small portion of the fan base would have been able to travel, to a P4 destination. Far more people are going to be able to go to a home game against Wyoming than make that trip to Indiana. The fact that it's the season opener, the fact that you have the storyline of CSU leaving for the Pac-12 and Wyoming staying in the Mountain West, first time it hasn't been a league game in forever. I just think it's going to be a really exciting moment, and it's going to be a really fun start to 2026 with the border war and BYU's coming to town, and then you'll have the Pac-12 opener likely in early October. I'm going to be getting married in between there. There's like a whole lot of chaos that's going to be happening in my life next September, but just kind of going through the numbers and thinking about how things have gone over the last 10 years, I'm far more in favor of prioritizing 7 home games, still trying to get at least one Power 4 opponent on the schedule, but most years keeping it at 1, giving yourself a better opportunity to potentially win double-digit games and gain access to the playoff. And that's not to say that you're going to do it or there's a guarantee or anything like that, but just strategically, I can get behind that. And I see some people in the comment section that mentioned some of the other games that were fun. Like the matchups with Minnesota were fun. They were competitive, and especially when it's a home and home, I can get behind that a little bit more than just a straight up buy game and taking $1 million to get your teeth kicked in by a Texas or something like that. But obviously the numbers show that most of the matchups have been closer to the blowout side than to the Minnesota matchups, which were a little more competitive. Iowa, Arkansas, even though that Arkansas team was terrible, guys. I get it's an SEC win. I'm not trying to take anything away from that team, but that was coaching malpractice by Chad Morris. He got fired for a reason. They're up double digits. They're running for like 7.5 yards a pop. And they start throwing the football. They got cute. They blew the game. Credit to CSU for stepping up and stealing it, something they historically almost never do in those scenarios. But I don't know. I push back on the idea that was CSU's biggest win in Canvas. I've asked that recently, and a lot of people point to that. I still think Oregon State was far more impactful. Even Boise State mattered more to me personally, but that's a different tangent for a different day. Credit Tom Berman, credit John Weber for making this happen. I'm really excited to see the rivalry continue. The 2026 non-conference schedule as of now will be September 5th, you open against Wyoming. Southern Utah comes to town the following week on the 19th. BYU comes for the first time in like 15 years. That'll be awesome. And then September 26th, that is at UTSA. Maybe you can get them back in the Alamo Dome after blowing it this year. And then as of now, CSU and Wyoming, they're on the books every year between 2026 and 2036, aside from 2027, which at the moment is idle. But my gut, based on what has happened recently, is that they will find a way to make that happen as well. Again, probably at the expense of that Wisconsin trip. But who knows? We'll see what happens. Maybe they aren't able to get out of it. If it is only 1 year you don't play, that's not ideal, but it's also not the end of the world. There are certain concessions you have to make with all of this. You're doing the best you can to both prioritize your history, keep this regional rivalry alive, but also keeping pace with an ever-changing landscape and trying to not get left behind. Because if you don't evolve, you will get left behind. That's a tough reality. Joey says, "Whoa, Jam getting married during football season in 2026. Groomsmen going to be hard to find." Yeah, happy wife, happy life, right? Like you gotta make sure they're getting the experience they deserve, and I'm certainly fortunate in that regard. All right, I am going to take a quick break, then we'll give you a brief injury update. We'll turn our attention to that Washington State matchup. We'll play some clips. Talked to Jackson Brousseau after practice the other day. We talked to Jay Norvell as well. But let's shout out those partners, and we'll keep it rolling. There's a lot of things that can get you worked up in the summer, like when your air conditioning goes out and it's 8 million degrees and you're just trying to cool off and you're trying to balance the stress of life and work and friends and family and just existing. And it's easy to get worked up, it's easy to be a bad vibe. It's easy to put yourself in a bad mood. You got to take every chance you have in life to choose chill, to put yourself in that proper state of mind. I like to go for a walk with the dog. I like to get a little bit of exercise, stuff like that. Get in the sun, get a little sweat going. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something. And then you feel like you earn the right to kick back and relax and have an ice cold Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment. You know the drill. When the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. Coors Light is cold lagered, it's cold filtered, and it's cold packaged for a smoother finish. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Beer. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota's built durable legends, destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you are conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma. Check out the Land Cruiser. Toyota has 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. They also have more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce that carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from. Check out the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. It's just fun to say, Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. But don't forget that Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail, so they're perfect for Colorado living. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics. They are the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. Word. I am going to talk to you guys about what I've been able to dig up on Washington State, what I've learned about them. But just a brief injury update here. Jackson Warren and Jordan Ross both missed last week. Both were in boots. Both are questionable per Jay Norvell for Saturday. Seems to me more like on the doubtful side of things and potentially not even back the following week. We shall see. I think it's more likely that it's, in that second or third conference game than sooner. But that's just my gut. Again, they're questionable per Jay Norvell. Also, Mukendi Wakalanji is out for the year. Second defensive lineman that the Rams have lost in the starting lineup for the year, which is brutal. Really was intrigued by what I had seen out of Mukendi to this point. Same thing with Gabe Jones. Both those guys were playing well. Gabe, smaller sample size, but both got hurt in kind of weird deals. It looked like he maybe got tangled up on the sidelines with the kicking net or something like that. I don't know. It was a bummer. It opens up some opportunities for Kenyon Aggers as well as Mozo Tudalele. We'll see. Hopefully those guys are able to elevate, but the depth in the trenches, which was maybe a question mark as is coming into the year, could potentially play a factor. And that's a bummer because I really like how this front seven has been playing. I feel like they've defended the run well. I know you give up a couple of big plays to Henry, but he's a monster. Overall, you look at the run stop rate that CSU's had over the last couple of weeks. It's been pretty encouraging. I've liked what I've seen, really aside from that week one matchup with Jonah Coleman. Another guy to keep an eye on, maybe DeAndre Gill, the redshirt junior is kind of able to put it together for the first time. But definitely a big blow to that run defense in particular, which had been playing awesome. you need some guys to step up at this point. The one benefit I would say is that guys like Tutalele, despite being new to CSU, he played a lot of ball for New Mexico. Started at UCLA, I believe, so has potential, no doubt. His dad played at CSU, but those are some guys I would keep an eye on. We're gonna play a clip here of Jackson Brousseau. He's short and sweet, not a man of many words, and our interview experiences to this point. Usually guys kind of loosen up as they get more used to us, but also some guys are just more on the quiet side, and there's nothing wrong with that. Comes off humble, in my opinion. But here was Jackson Brousseau after practice earlier this week to kind of set the scene for this matchup with Washington State.
Jackson, I mean, just what's the biggest thing for you this week in preparing? Obviously, you know, you're going to be the guy to start.
Just sticking to the process that we do every week and trying to be as efficient as we can, and just getting the ball to the guys in space. That's really the key.
How much does it help you getting some of those couple drives at the end of Saturday? Even just comfort, confidence, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, all of it. It's good. It's good to be out there and play and get reps and get a feel for it. But the process stays the same. We just got to do what we got to do.
You were pretty, calm, cool, and collected post game. But was there any moment where you kind of looked up and took it all in?
To be honest, no. I wish I would have. I was just super focused on the situation and trying to score points. But yeah, I didn't. I was all focused in.
What do you feel like clicked for you guys offensively?
The O-line really stepped up and we ran the ball well. And then we converted on third downs and we just drove the ball down the field, and we got to keep doing that.
Kind of going back, even to high school and recruiting and stuff, like it's ways back now, but like what was it that led you here? Like you wanted this program?
The people, to be honest. I came out here and it was really family oriented, and they also threw the ball a lot, which I really liked as a quarterback. And so I was intrigued, and they were honest with me with everything, and so I loved it here. There's never a doubt in my mind where I was going.
Yeah, do you feel pressure this week gelling with the guys, or do you feel like that chemistry is already built in?
No, it's already there. I've been here for a while. We do everything together. You're here 9 months out of the year mostly, so you're just together all the time, and the gel's there.
You're what, 3-sport guy in high school?
Yes, sir.
Was it basketball, baseball?
Yeah,
right?
Basketball, baseball, and football. Yep.
Okay, yeah. And you won a couple titles in baseball?
Yeah, we had one in baseball, 2 in football, and then one in basketball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jay called you a great teammate Saturday night, credited, the way you've approached things the last couple of years. Just what was your teammates' reaction to you getting this opportunity?
I think they're excited, and I think everyone's excited just to be a part of the team, and we're excited for everyone on this team. There's not a guy on the team that you wouldn't be excited for if they got a chance to go out there and play. So,
was there ever a moment where, doubt started to creep in? I'm doing all this work day in, day out, multiple years, the opportunity isn't coming?
No, to be honest, there wasn't. It was always about just doing what I can and controlling what I can control, and letting whatever happens, and that's just how you have to live life. And if you don't live it that way, then it's going to be frustrating, and you're going to get down really quick. And it just wasn't worth it for me because I love these people here. So I just want to be my best self all the time, and if I'm living that way, I can't be my best self.
What's the reaction back home, friends, family, and stuff, man?
Yeah, they're all excited. They're pumped for me to play, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Has this week felt normal, different?
Yeah.
I mean, it's early, but
besides the rain, it's been pretty normal. Yeah.
fair enough.
How would you describe your game, as a quarterback?
I just try and get the guys in the best situation possible. Let them run, let the O-line work, and just be the best team guy I can be.
What about your other sports? What you do in basketball? What's your
Basketball,
game?
I kind of got beat up on from my brother, so I was good at sitting in the corner and shooting a little three here and there, playing defense. Could handle the ball a little. I like passing it, but baseball, I pitched and played first.
What's your pitching repertoire?
I threw a fastball as a 2-seamer, changeup, curveball, slider, and then a split finger.
All right, chance to get to know Jackson Brousseau a little bit there. Again, I felt like he came off humble, gracious, all of that stuff, said all the right things, which is exciting. I do just kind of going through the Toyota chat here, which I didn't do a great job of when I was monologuing there at the beginning. I see some comments about some of the scheduling stuff I was talking about. I do want to just clarify one thing. I'm not ignorant to the financial necessities that CSU has when it comes to scheduling. I'm not advocating to completely stop playing Power 4 opponents. I'm more talking about some of those years where you play 2-3, like 2018, you're playing Arkansas and Florida and CU. I mean, you're really not setting yourself up for success there. Obviously, they won that game in 2018. against Arkansas with kind of a fluky comeback. But there have been multiple years here where you're playing multiple P4s, and I just don't know how beneficial that is. Obviously, you're still going to have to play one, but I would also add the counter that you want to know what else helps you make money. Winning football games. There'd be money to be made if you could, get to the playoff. I think if you're selling tickets like CSU is doing well right now, again, with that 7th home game, there are a lot of factors that you have to consider. And I just want to make sure that we add all that. I'm not trying to oversimplify it or act like I have all the answers. It really is. It's a tap dance. It's a tough balance of trying to offset the gap financially between you and some of these bigger leagues. And you can get $1.5 million, $2 million right off the bat. That's a great way to do it. But there is just something to be said about from a competitive standpoint, it might not be the best way to, start your season out and get some momentum going and stuff like that. But yeah, it's tough. All right, let's move on to Washington State. Just kind of throwing out the history real quick. There's not a lot of history. They've played 3 times on the last 15 years. The first was the 2013 New Mexico Bowl, still my favorite game of all time, probably that or the 2002 Showdown. But the Rams won 48-45 in what is still to this day one of the craziest finishes I've ever seen in at any level. That game was just so much fun. I go back about once a year and watch it on YouTube. It's worth it. The Cougars rolled in both 2022 and 2023 with Cam Ward. They won 38-7 in the first matchup, then 50-24 in that 2023 game, which actually was the beginning of the Braden Fowler-Nicolosi era. Kind of interesting how that's played out a couple years later. Now the beginning of the Jackson Brousseau era will take place against Washington State. I said this at the beginning, but this is not the same old Washington State that you're used to. This is not a Mike Leach offense. This is not even what we saw with Cam Ward in terms of the threats that they have out wide and stuff like that. They hired Jimmy Rogers, who I felt like was a really solid hire given the tough spot that they were in. Jake Dickert, of course, left after last season, went to Wake Forest, took a lot of green and gold with him too. A couple of coaches and Adam Pillapel and Freddie Banks is there, took a couple of players and Noor Gatkuth, as well as Gabe Kershke. And there was a corner, I'm drawing a blank on his name, who was committed to CSU, who I was pretty excited about that they were able to swipe last minute as well. So a little bit of common hatred there, common enemy between CSU and Washington State, probably both rooting against Wake Forest. But again, Jimmy Rogers comes over from South Dakota State. They won a national title there in 2023. More of a defensive-minded coach. They had always had kind of a dual threat type quarterback, ran the ball well. That's how a lot of successful FCS teams operate. But as far as the names to know go, quarterback Zevi Eckhouse, who I had projected as winning the starting job when we were doing some of the schedule preview stuff back in the summer. That didn't end up being the case. Jackson Potter got the gig, was a younger guy, came over from South Dakota State with Rogers. Eckhouse was a holdover from the previous regime. Not traditionally a quarterback that I would say fits the mold of the Rogers offense that we had seen at South Dakota State, at least. Again, he's a defensive background guy, but just based on what we had seen from them, stylistically, more of a pocket passer. That said, Eckhouse has rushed for a touchdown in 3 straight games that he's played in, going back to the bowl game last year, where I actually thought he played pretty well and was part of why I thought he would win the gig. Running back Angel Johnson is a guy who's rushed for over 1,000 yards at the FCS level. Wazzu has not run the ball well. We'll talk about that quite a bit, but he is somebody who you have to keep an eye on, who's experienced and has a lot of production throughout his career, despite some struggles this season. That's more on the OL than him, I believe. But linebacker Parker McKenna, he leads the team in tackles. He's definitely somebody to keep an eye on as well. Just kind of getting into the numbers here and some stuff that you should know. Washington State, they've struggled to run the ball themselves. They're only averaging about 2 yards per carry as a team. Over 80% of their offensive production comes through the air right now, and that's really not what they wanted to be. I don't think they're truly built to play that way, but that's the tough spot when it's year one and you're trying to mesh, different eras of players. They've got a ton of FCS and South Dakota State transfers, a couple of holdovers. It's just not the type of receiving core that we got used to seeing over the years at Wazzu. A lot of them were transfers, to be honest, but they had some pretty solid guys these last couple of years. They had the kid that came over from UNLV, who's Kyle something. But yeah, it's just a far different looking team. They're struggling to run the ball. They're forced to throw it. And because of that, they've had some turnover issues. They've had 8 turnovers over the last 2 weeks, averaging 2.5 turnovers per game right now. That's something that you need to try and take advantage of if you are CSU, as well as Washington State struggles to stop the run. Not only have they kind of struggled to win in the trenches on the offensive side, Washington State's given up 151 yards per game on the ground, given up about 2.5 rushing touchdowns, but at 35 points allowed per game, they're giving up 2.5 passing touchdowns per game as well. So it's just been a struggle for them defensively. Almost every one of their defensive starters is an FCS transfer. A couple of the guys look the part. A lot of guys, especially in the secondary, I'd say not so much. So this is, knock on wood, hopefully an opportunity to get the offense going. But as we all know, I've said that each of the last 2 weeks as well, and that did not come to fruition. So maybe with the quarterback change, we'll finally see the offense show some identity, show some consistency. If I have to watch another game of 8 punts and 3 and outs or turnovers like Northern Colorado, then I'm going to rip my hair out. Let's take a quick break. Let's shout out our partners. Keep it rolling. Keep the comments and questions coming in the Toyota chat. If I don't get to it right away, we can always star it and come back at the end of the show. All right. I am still excited that college football is back. I know that some of the post-game vibes have not necessarily been in line with that. Been some frustrating walks to the car post-game. Pretty familiar feeling, if we're being honest. And then the Canvas Stadium era. But there really is nothing like the feeling of when you get to campus for game day, when all of the hope and possibility is still in play. Today's going to be our day. You're smelling the dogs on the grill, cracking open ice cold Coors Lights. You're hanging out with buddies. Maybe you got some music going. There's just nothing like it. And our friends at Game Time, they make it easier than ever to get access to tickets, especially last minute. It gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. Incredibly easy to use. Plus, the Game Time guarantee means you can trust 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. Fees are always included. Let's take a look here at what they've got going for this weekend. Last week, there were tickets as low as like $30. Right now, it's looking similar prices. Yeah, you can get a really good deal on these CSU tickets in the 100 levels as well. Tickets for about $43. So, a little higher than last week, but not too bad. It is state pride after all. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account. Use that code DNVR for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account. Redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. All right. Golf season is coming to an end, but never a bad time to pick up a new hat, for the links, or maybe you just want to wear it. If you're a hat guy like me, you might just wear a hat every day in your everyday life. And our friends at Branded Bills have you covered with snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees. Branded Bills has you covered with the performance and style. If you're looking for gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. We actually have some sweet new DNVR hats. Go check them out. I have some Die Hard promo specials where you can get one as well. If you start your order, their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel you need. They've got a partnership with CSU as part of their on-campus collection. Got a couple on display back here. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. All right, we are going to play a clip from Jay Norvell here in just a second, but just a couple of things I'm looking for out of CSU. These aren't my keys to victory, which we'll get to as well. But just kind of in the bigger picture sense, how aggressive will CSU be offensively? I really praise Jackson Brousseau for his ability to lead back-to-back scoring drives. Did a good job of progressing through his reads, getting the ball on time to his receivers accurately. They were able to keep the sticks moving. The efficiency on third down, night and day from what we had seen in that second and third quarter, and that allowed CSU to open up the run game. They're averaging like 2 yards per carry in the third quarter because UTSA is just stacking the box, daring CSU to throw. Then all of a sudden, you start hitting some of those passing plays with consistency, opens up things in the run game. The Rams average about 7.5 yards a pop in that fourth quarter. All of that was great. That said, we did not see a ton of success down the field vertically. They didn't really try for that, so I don't blame them. I think they took one shot down the sideline to Kojo, I believe it was. But I would like to see CSU find some success there. It doesn't need to be every series. 2-3 big passing plays a game open up all kinds of possibility for what you can be. And if they can just start hitting those with consistency with what they have in that backfield, I really do think there's an opportunity here to get this offense going. Can you build off of some of the positives? I've seen some comments in the Toyota chat about a couple of these names, but it was great to see Rocky Beers finally be a part of the picture. Kudos to him. He was dinged up a little bit, was able to gut it out, ends up having a great game, catches his first CSU touchdown. Armani Winfield looked great, led the team in receptions and receiving yards. He's somebody who I think is kind of hitting his stride here and coming into his own. Man, when he has the ball in the open field, he's dangerous. He is going to break one of these screens for a 50-plus yard touchdown at some point. Like, I'm excited. And, as CD6 says here in the Toyota chat, in fairness, the one deep ball they tried, it was a really good ball. You're spot on about that. I just mean that's kind of been a theme for CSU, a lot like the Broncos, if you're a Broncos fan. So close on some of those deep balls last week, but you have to start hitting on those to open up the things you want to do underneath. If you start hitting those, now all of a sudden you're going to have all kinds of room with the crossers and quick screens and a lot of the easy stuff that Norvell loves to go to. But it all kind of has to work in sync is what I'm trying to say here. Can you take away the passing game from Wazzu? Can you make them one-dimensional? I think there's a good opportunity here for the defense to flex, not trying to get too cocky or anything like that. I just think offensively, Wazzu's been a bit of a mess. Eckhouse made some plays, against Washington. To his credit, the game was out of hand, but he did move the ball a little bit better than what we had seen the couple of weeks leading before. Defensively, they're just a mess, giving up 50-plus points back-to-back weeks. We do need to see a far cleaner performance from CSU in terms of penalties, though. 121st in the FBS in penalty yards per game right now, averaging like 76 yards. It's just... it needs to be better. I'm somebody who doesn't feel all penalties are equal. Same thing with turnovers. Sometimes you throw a pick. It was the exact right decision. It was a great ball, and the DB just makes a good play. That doesn't mean you made a bad play or, that you made the wrong decision. The defense just stepped up. Some picks are bad decisions. Penalties are kind of similar. I don't have beef with my offensive lineman picking up 15 for going after a dirty defensive lineman and having his running backs back. The OPI I thought was rough, but that's 2 penalties. He had over 115 yards of penalties last week. So clearly a whole lot of other instances where you just need to play cleaner. And if they don't fix that, that is going to hurt CSU, especially in some of these tight games. That is a factor when you're extending drives and giving teams more opportunities to score on you. Eventually it is going to hurt you. Or the other way, kills your momentum of a drive and kills all the progress that you had. I just want to see them clean it up a little bit, but without losing an edge. You pick up 1 or 2 for playing hard. That's not the end of the world to me, because I've really loved the physicality I've seen from this defense. I've raved about the linebackers. I couldn't be more pro Owen Long than I am. Jacob Ellis, I feel like the last couple weeks has been great. Didn't feel like he was awesome against Washington, but really feel like he's played good these last couple of weeks. He's been a big addition for this team. But the corners, man, as somebody who grew up in the Champ Bailey era, one of the best tackling corners of all time, it warms my heart to see the way that Lamondre Joe plays. And Jahari Rogers is not afraid to get his helmet in there as well. He had a big hit on Owen McCown. Jay is actually about to talk about this in a clip, and the next play, it's what caused that turnover. The physicality, you didn't get the payoff on that play, but the very next play, it results in that. So here is Jay Norvell talking about that, as well as answering my question on if you could feel the team's energy kind of respond when Jackson Brousseau took over in the fourth quarter last week.
Been by design. I mean, we demand physicality from our skilled players. I mean, if you're going to be a corner or a wide receiver in our program, you're going to block and you're going to tackle. And I've been so proud of Lamondre and Jahari. The edge pressure that we put on them really changed the game. You know, that quarterback is a good player, McCown, and that's a good football team that we played Saturday night. You know, that tailback's an NFL player. McCown knows how to play the position. But we forced him into, you know, a real subpar performance Saturday night. And a lot of that had to do with the pressure that we put on him. And, you know, one of the plays we showed this morning was Jahari hit McCown early in the game. And the very next play, he spun and threw the ball without even looking and threw an interception. And so quarterbacks are human beings. They do not like to get hit. So when we can put pressure on them and hit them early in the game, it affects the game. And so that's what makes me so encouraged about going back and watching the things that happened in this game. We are developing a personality and a chemistry and a style of play that we want. And that's what makes me excited as a head coach. And we're going to keep pressing for that style of play. But a lot of the categories ended up the way we wanted them from Saturday night, and we just got to keep trending in that direction.
You mentioned that the team responded when Jackson came in. Was that like an energy you could feel on the sideline?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that the team supports Jackson. But I think it was more about execution. It was just about execution. He came in and he did his job, and he executed, and everybody else responded. And I think the big thing about our football team is that there's no panic in our kids. Our kids believe in each other. They care about each other, and they love one another. And I think that's evident, you know, when you see us in close games at the end. And I think that's the challenge of most college programs. You have to develop that chemistry and that closeness, because you're going to hit adversity. And it's a challenge with so many new players and transfers. To get that chemistry is not easy for a lot of programs. And so we've got to continue to develop that. We've made huge strides in training camp and in the first 3 games. And we're not exactly where we want to be, but we've got a lot of our football in front of us, and we need to continue to press to get cleaner execution in all areas.
Jay, you mentioned how
All right, kind of a long-winded answer there. I don't know if he necessarily directly answered what I asked, but that's kind of the process in a press conference. But I do think what stands out about his comments is there are a lot of positives to work off of, and I mentioned that last week. I wasn't furious about the performance against UTSA, especially on the defensive side. Offensively, it was rough until that fourth quarter where you found a spark, found a little bit of hope. One of the comments here from Brett kind of goes in line with what Jay said. Brett says, I thought Jackson was good about getting the ball out quick. 2 short routes and screens seemed like BFN would take too long to get the ball to the outside. I think that's an astute observation. You know, I'm not going to go through the whole ramble again that I did Monday. If you missed Monday's show, I really did a lot of it on the quarterback struggles, whether the change is going to be able to fix things. And one of the things that I've talked about is just temper your expectations. I think Jackson throws a good ball. I thought he did a good job of keeping the offense on schedule. What the Rams were able to do well in that game was nothing that complicated. You know, it was a lot of the simple stuff. And that was the thing that was really killing Braden, on top of how he just didn't seem to be comfortable in the pocket. His mechanics were a mess, but he wasn't able to take what the defense was giving him. I also think he was in his head. I'm speaking for him, obviously. This is not, I can't know what's in his head, but just visually from watching him out there, he seemed very frazzled in the pocket at all times. And I just think he was missing easy plays. And if you can't take the easy stuff, it's going to be really hard to have any type of success on the more challenging stuff. And Jackson did a good job of just giving the offense a chance to stay on track. And I think that's something they can build off of. Now, again, he is going to have to show a little bit more than what he did. It can't just all be dink and dunk on the outside. stuff like that. But if you can hit those with consistency with what you have in the run game, you connect on a couple of vertical shots, you can start using the middle of the field. Again, it was great to see him looking for Rocky Beers. Just felt like after having some success there against Washington, they kind of went away from that. And some of that was probably injury related with Warren and Beers, but those are all things that we saw CSU do well in the fourth quarter after not really being able to do it for the majority of the first 11 quarters or whatever it was. I want to see CSU build off of that. CD Stick says, can JB be Nick Stevens? Potentially. I want to say that both as a compliment and explain the context of it. Nick Stevens physically was nothing remarkable. He was not some freak athlete in terms of arm strength, probably average to slightly below average even, but he was incredibly efficient. He was accurate. He made good decisions with the football. And outside of some missed deep balls here or there, the way he ran that offense at the end of 2016 and 2017 was like a well-oiled machine. And what he did a really good job of was distributing the ball. They had a really diverse group of receivers in terms of skill set, but he spread the love around. He took advantage of the talented backfield that they had, and he kept the offense on schedule. He didn't put the team in harm's way. He probably wasn't 2014 Grayson out there, like just picking people apart left and right. That's the best we've seen the position played at CSU in a while, outside of small glimpses of Colin Hill, who I will go to my grave thinking, what if that guy just stayed healthy, because he was a physical freak. Plus he had the intelligence of a Stevens or a Grayson, and just could have been something really special. But I do think there's a world where Jackson could be that. And I think at times the term game manager gets used in a negative connotation. It's to imply that they aren't on the same level of the truly elite tier of quarterbacks, but that's a really slim group, guys. You look in the NFL, you look across college football, the percentage of teams that truly have elite quarterback play, it's few and far between. And you just need to have, in my opinion, with the speed you have at receiver, assuming you get Jackson Warren back, the talent you have at tight end between him and Beers, and the really, really talented backfield, like you don't have to be Patrick Mahomes. Like if you could give us a Kirk Cousins type effort or a Nick Stevens type effort, this is a team that can win some games, especially if the defense is going to stop the run and you're going to be able to cause turnovers like they did a week ago. And you're not putting the ball, on the ground yourself like you did against UNC, which was just so frustrating. But again, like how many times are you going to fumble 4 times in a game? It's more on the flukier side of things. With all that in mind, let's kind of wrap this up before we get into our Mountain West power ranking. Here are my 3 keys to victory for CSU. Funny enough, I think CSU got 2 out of the 3 last week, still didn't win, but can you score 25 plus points? I knock on wood, I don't want to jinx us. I hate doing stuff like this because then when it goes wrong, you're going to get memed. But based on what I have seen offensively from Washington State and based on what I have seen defensively from CSU to this point, this doesn't feel like a week where you should get torched. If you score 25 plus points, that feels like a win. It feels like you're going to win to me. I haven't seen them do it yet, so we'll see. But this is hopefully going to be the week we finally see the offense get some momentum going. You got to win the turnover margin again. They've turned the ball over a lot, and that's something that you hopefully continues to be a trend this week. But you can't put the ball in harm's way yourself either. That's obvious football 101 stuff. And then finally, can you limit the explosive plays for Wazzu, which I think as a whole, CSU did a pretty good job against UTSA, especially in the passing game, and that'll be a key this week. Hopefully this is not the coming out party for that Washington State rushing offense or anything like that, but I think if you can force them in a position to try and run the ball and feel like they're not able to throw the ball with any type of success, that really puts CSU in an advantageous position for this matchup. If you can get a lead, establish a lead, get some confidence, get the vibes right. Admittedly, it's been kind of a weird vibe in the stadium the last couple of weeks because of so much frustration with the fans. I don't blame people. It's been really ugly at times, but it would just be great to get off to a big lead and then just execute. I'm not saying just score a couple of touchdowns, then put the parking brake on or anything like that, but take advantage of that rushing attack that you have and potentially bury someone, because I think there's an opportunity here to get the vibes right, because I feel like this is a very winnable game, and the spread kind of agrees with me. So we shall see. All right, here is my updated Mountain West power ranking. We do it every week. Just honestly, I'll ask you guys for feedback on this. You can comment it on the Twitter chat if you're listening after the fact. Maybe tweet at me. Are you guys still into the Mountain West power ranking? This was something that I've done for over 5 years now, but it kind of feels like it's something that everybody does now, and maybe I'm just not as into it because of that. I liked that it was something unique we're doing, and now if everybody's doing it, it's not that unique of a segment, but whatever. I guess we'll keep it rolling. I'll decide on next year if we're going to keep it going or not. But at number 12, it's Nevada. They have not moved this season. I don't anticipate that they will. San Jose State did pull out the win over Idaho, but it was not convincing, and that's an Idaho team that has struggled this year. They come in at 11, down a spot from the past week. Wyoming at 10, mostly because offensively I just have questions about their offensive line, but I do think defensively they're stout. I had to put them below San Diego State, though, who jumped from 11 to 9 this week with what I would say was the most surprising outcome in the Mountain West in at least a decade. They thumped Cal, who everybody was starting to fall in love with and talking about being a potential fringe threat in the ACC, and then all of a sudden they just get thumped by San Diego State. 34-0, I believe, was the final score. Credit San Diego State. As soon as I wrote them off, they came out with the prove it game. I am interested to see this week, though. They're at Northern Illinois, and they're small favorites. I think 2 points last time I checked. It wouldn't shock me to see them really lay an egg this weekend after, again, everybody starts to buy into them because of what they showed against Cal. It just felt so unexpected that I almost lean more on the fluky side of things. Again, we'll see. A big test for them. CSU, I dropped from 7 to 8. I did feel like Air Force deserved to jump the Rams just based on their competitive showing against Boise State. Had CSU 1, probably just would have kept them at 7. I don't know if I would have moved them up, because what I've seen out of Utah State's offense has been big time. Mendenhall, you knew he would take advantage of Bryson Barnes' skill set, but they are far more explosive than I expected given what was lost in that receiving core. Kept New Mexico at 5, mostly for vibes. I'm rooting for the Lobos. I really am. They didn't play last week. They've got a big rivalry game against New Mexico State. This is the type of game where you've got to validate the hype, essentially, and prove it's not a fluke, because that's a terrible New Mexico State team. You're at home. They're going to have an awesome crowd. Don't lay an egg and kill all of the good faith you've established to this point. Hawaii at 4, Fresno State 3. I flipped them. Fresno State won a tight game, 2-point game on the island. Fresno is for real. I have to give them credit. I was not into them. I still have some questions offensively, mostly because Warner is kind of turnover prone. But what they do defensively is so much more legit than UNLV. It's not flashy, but what Fresno State does to me feels sustainable. UNLV skanking out a game, and just an epic choke job from Miami of Ohio. You got to credit UNLV. They came back from 3 different double-digit deficits in that game, but I do not believe in that defense. I think they're athletic. I think they've got some big play potential, some corners that can get pick sixes, some receivers, and a running back that's capable of breaking big plays. But I do feel like they've been on the flukier side of things. Maybe that's me staying entrenched in my preseason beliefs. I kept them at 2. If I really wanted to be petty, I would have put Fresno at 2, because I truly do believe in their defense so much more than what I've seen from UNLV. But they are undefeated, and you got to be fair to them in that regard. Number 1, it's Boise State. I keep seeing people argue UNLV. I keep trying to see people argue a lot of teams. Boise State is still the best team in the group of 5. They just are. You look at that running game that they've got, and there's some good teams this year. Tulane's really good. Tulane's probably the only team I would give them a realistic, and South Florida, I guess, because of the head-to-head. But Boise's going to be fine. They're so deep at running back. I mean, we were talking all off season about Sherrod and Sire Gaines, and then the other kid, Dylan Riley or whatever, comes out with a 5 touchdown game against Air Force. Just insane. I do think Boise's defense is a real liability, and I think that's actually part of what has me buying into Fresno and even like Hawaii to an extent. Hawaii's been far more consistent defensively than at any other point of the Timmy Chang era. Boise and UNLV, you can move the ball on those teams. You can score on them. And that means, theoretically anything's possible. It could just turn into a shootout any given week. They're always going to score. They're always going to be in it. But I don't think they're world beaters. And honestly, it feels like a year where it could get a really wonky title result. Like, how hilarious would it be like Hawaii and Fresno in a rematch or something like that? My picks for this weekend, it's kind of a wonky slate in terms of advocating where to put your money. I don't like a lot of these picks. I do think Utah State has a chance to keep it frisky with Vanderbilt. They're 23.5-point dogs. Just with what we've seen from Utah State offensively, I think they can stay within 24 points of Vandy. Do wonder if they're going to be able to stop them. I would stay away from San Diego State, Northern Illinois. It feels too much unknown. I don't love a rivalry game spread. I'd stay away from that. I kind of like Hawaii to cover 6.5 in the Springs. Maybe I'm crazy because Hawaii historically not very good on the road in conference play. But I'm staying true to my faith in Timmy Chang and this Hawaii team. And Air Force, despite moving the ball well on Boise, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop that Hawaii offense. That's why I like Hawaii to cover that. Give me CSU to cover the 5.5. Maybe it's me just being dumb. Maybe I've got rose-colored glasses on or something like that. I like the Rams to win this game by about a touchdown. I think Washington State will make some plays. I don't think it'll be a blowout or anything like that, but I like CSU to win this one. Hopefully they prove me right. We shall see. Kevin says he's a few minutes behind on the stream, but he does enjoy the power ranking because you actually talk about each team. Sure, lots of people post rankings, but it's nice just to hear the insight on the Mountain West. Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I watch all these games. That was kind of where the idea of it came, was I'm watching all these games. I record them if I can't watch them live. I try my best to cover the league accurately and really, do my homework, because it's frustrating when you go to try to find info or you listen to other people and it's clear that they just haven't watched anybody but the team that they cover. Fun, going to be a real stimulating conversation then. But I do appreciate the feedback. Just some questions, comments, final thoughts here. Owen Long is so freaking good, guys. He already has 38 tackles. He had 45 last year. He's already got 38, on pace for 150 tackle season. Currently leads the FBS in total tackles per game. He is so good. We're gonna have to get the paycheck ready for him. Shout out to Olivia Fout of CSU football, CSU women's soccer, able to pull out a draw on the road against Utah State, which is a result I think you would be satisfied with. Utah State, a good program. Fout scored her 20th career goal. She is the all-time leading goal scorer in program history now. I do want to thank you guys for a lot of the kind messages that I received this week. Last Friday, we dedicated the show to my grandmother, my Nana, who I told you guys was not long for this earth. Unfortunately, she passed away this week. Not my favorite week in the world, so I'll be real with you there. I apologize for not being quite as active on social. I'm definitely a little bit behind on some of the written stuff that I would have liked to have done. But had some real life stuff to deal with this week, and I just really do appreciate all of you. I did take some heat even from CSU fans, I will say, for mocking the Rockies on Twitter this week. If you missed it, they do a rookie tradition. I think it's always in Seattle, but where like the rookies, one year they all went out to Starbucks in uniform. This year they all dressed up in like the yellow fisherman's coats. It's funny. It's in Seattle. I shared it with the Seth Rogen meme from Step Brothers, where he's like, now the tuxedos seem kind of effed up. I don't know. Maybe when you're -4, -16 and run differential, just wait a year. I get it. That's probably a bit of an old man take for me. They're human. I'm not saying they can't ever have fun. But honestly, when you were the worst team in the NL since the early 60s, like, I just think read the room just a little bit. I'm a pretty optimistic, like, have fun type of guy, but it genuinely made me mad. And again, maybe that's me being an old man yelling at the sky, but I just kept thinking of that Moneyball scene where they lose the game and Jeremy Giambi's, dancing, and Billy Bean, aka or played by Brad Pitt, goes in there and smashes it with a baseball bat and asks the room, is losing fun? So what are you having fun for? And when you're minus 420 in run differential, what are you having fun for? That's my 2 cents on it all. Thank you guys so much for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Big game Saturday night. We'll be going live again Monday afternoon to break it all down. A ton of written content coming your way this weekend. Always proud to be y'all. Much love. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.